Hey, what's up, Kalen here? Welcome to yesterday's Tweets Today, number 13. This is the first time I am doing it on Twitch because Twitch has a pretty cool live stream. Seems like it has the best live stream support. I've been trying Periscope and YouTube and stuff, and I've heard good things about Twitch. So, giving this a shot, hopefully it works out. I'm in the chat here, so I should be able to see any questions that come in on the chat. So, all right, let's jump on into it. All right, topics for today: podcast studio update, weight loss goal update, social authentication, 11 best practices for working remotely, Webflow update, and I think that might be about it. Got one more topic that's a maybe. We'll see if we can squeeze that one in. Gotta keep my phone here. Do a quick chat. Hey, any questions? Fire away. See if we get any action in there. All right. Live streaming, man. It's wild. A lot of moving parts. Okay, podcast studio update. So I finally pulled the trigger on some equipment for the podcast studio, which I'm gonna get basically just getting another mic, but I'm getting two of these fancy Shure mics, Shure SM7B cardioid dynamic microphones, I got to get a mixer and a preamp. My buddy Marvin helped me out with that. I got to link him up in case anybody needs help with sound and stuff like that. He's a beast. But anyways, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the idea of getting people over here to do in-person podcasts because I think that there's just something really cool about in-person versus, remote podcasts. And so, but it's surprisingly complicated. Like you would think that an in-person podcast should be simpler than a remote podcast, but it's like way more complicated because now you need like plugging in two mics into a computer is like a hot mess. You need a mixer, and then you got to isolate the sound so that the sound doesn't bleed from one mic to the other. So you got to have special mics. It's totally nuts, but I'm really excited about getting that going. And then like when people are in town in Austin, they can slide on in, and so that should be a lot of fun. So anyways, that was the update there. Weight loss goal update. All right, so I broke 195 pounds. I got to 194.6 on the Richter scale, and that was exciting. I'm down from 225, or so. And so basically 30 pounds, which is really exciting. And my big goal, well, first goal was to get below 200. I hadn't been below 200 in probably like 7 years. So I never thought I'd do that. I always seemed to like 205. I just couldn't get past, and other times when I would try to lose weight. And so, so I got below that, and then 190 is really, I don't think I've been below 190 in like 10 years. So that's going to be a big goal, and I was like, I need to celebrate. I need to find a way to celebrate that. And so I've always wanted to go to like Puerto Rico, Costa Rica too, but Puerto Rico. And so that's what I'm going to do, celebrate when I hit that 190 mark. So yeah, that should be fun. But yeah, and then there's been a bunch of people replying back that with their own weight loss goals and things like that, and that's been really cool to see. And so hopefully we can all encourage each other to hit those goals. I did have one person ask what's the secret to losing weight or whatnot, and so I've had maybe one or two people ask. So just real quickly, my program is calories in, calories out. So I've tried a lot of, actually my buddy Philip was the one that told me he was doing calories in, calories out, and so that really, because it's weird because like so many people are like, you got to do macros, or you got to do I tried keto, I've tried these other things where you don't have to count your calories. you just do X, Y, and Z, and then it didn't end up working. But there's something very sort of straightforward about, look, it's just science. Like, eat less calories than you burn. Now, of course, it's not exactly that simple because you don't know how many calories you burn, and the amount of calories you burn decreases when you start eating less. So then you got to keep your activity level up and things like that. So it still is tricky and frustrating and stuff like that. But I've been doing 1,800 calories a day. I've been eating a grip of Chipotle. Literally, I eat the same thing every single day. I've started the last couple of weeks to have like one cheat meal per week, which seems like it's working out okay. So like yesterday I had burgers, and last week we had burgers. Week before that we had pizza, but that's just very recent. But I have still actually continued to lose weight the last several weeks, so I think the cheat meal thing is working. Um, but yeah, and then walking. So I'm doing like 10,000 steps a day, walking. And then I've been doing strong lifts, which is a great workout program for lifting weights for beginners to get in there and figure stuff out. And also been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 2 times a week, which has been a lot of fun. So that's pretty much it. And I think 99% of it is just the calories. So anyways, that's the program. That's the program I've been doing. Single social auth. Okay, so I saw this tweet from Ryan Hoover, which oh, my phone turned off. I gotta find a way to get the phone not to turn off because then I won't see chat messages. Uh, don't have any chat messages yet in here, but that's fine. Not that I'm offended or anything like that. So how do I keep this phone on? Do not know. Okay, so tweet from Ryan Hoover. There are many reasons to focus on a single social auth in the beginning. Easier to combat spam abuse. Built-in social graph can be used as distribution re-engagement channel. Many social products make the mistake of bifurcating logins in the early days. And he was mentioning or responding to an original tweet from Alex Lukisis, which says, I don't get new services that don't offer basic email password sign up and only support social logins. And so Ryan was basically saying, well, this is sort of a good reason to only support social logins, which I totally agree with. It probably is handy to have, a manual email sign up, and then and that can definitely come in handy. But like, man, it's such a it's like I've been in this discovery mode where I'm signing up for things more often. I'm doing stuff on my phone. I'm going from Twitter and I see something, and then in the past I'd be like, I don't want to sign up for that. Who wants to sign up for stuff? But I've been more like, oh, let me just sign up for stuff. And it like the amount of friction when you can do a social auth, just a tap, versus like type in email, type in password, generate password, open up LastPass, all this stuff. The amount of friction is just completely different. There was actually this service that I thought was super cool for sharing the stuff that you've worked on. And I was like, I'm going to sign up for that. And then I went to sign up and it didn't have a social auth. And I was like, nope. Which I was being kind of lazy. But that's the thing. People are lazy. So social auth all the way. That said, there are some, I have to say, there are some downsides to social auth. So I recently moved Commerce Hero from an email sign up to LinkedIn authentication purely. That's all. That's it. If you don't want a LinkedIn auth, sorry, can't use the service. Because I've just seen LinkedIn, like, yes, some people don't have it, but 99% of people in a work context have LinkedIn. So I just streamlined on that. Now, here's one of the problems with LinkedIn. A lot of people have some like 13-year-old email address on their LinkedIn account. And so when I send emails to people who signed up using LinkedIn, I feel like my response rates have gone down, and it kind of makes sense because it's probably sending some 13-year-old personal Yahoo account they set up LinkedIn with, as opposed to their actual work email. So that's a bit of a downside. But anyways, I think that social auth is just the way to go. All right. 11 best practices for working remotely. This is a tweet from Maria Prokopets. Remote work is a challenge. My journey of going 100% remote was a struggle. Loneliness, isolation, burnout, but it's now my superpower. I wrote a guide on how to stop struggling based on hundreds of tips and survey responses from remote workers. What I loved about this tweet was the combination of the uh, uh, struggle with remote work along with the superpower. And like, so many people, I feel like the discussion is, I feel like the discussion around remote work is an either or. It's some people who say remote work is the best. I would never do anything else. I love it. It's fantastic. Yeah, there's some problems, but it's the best. And then there's other people that are like, remote doesn't work for me. I tried it. It's never going to work for me. I hate it. And I think the truth is that somewhere in the, well, I think the truth is that we're all moving to remote work. In the same, not all in the purely mathematical sense of 100%, but in the same sense that quote everyone works in cities, which is true. I don't know, like people that work in major metro areas. It's like I don't know, 90% of people or some large percent of people. I think to that same extent, it's going to be true that we're all going to work remote. There's going to be some massive percentage of people. Just the fundamental economics just make it make sense. Whether that's 10 years out, 20 years out. But so I know people that have tried it and been like, oh man, this is so hard. And these issues are real. Isolation, loneliness, burnout are real issues. And depending on our personalities, we deal with those. Some people deal with those better than others, but to the extent that we can find tools, techniques, and best practices to overcome those, I think that we'll all be able to do a better job of it. And so there's a great article that she wrote. I'm just going to zoom in on the bullet list of the best practices here. Um, uh, so number one, practice good meeting etiquette. Um, Makes sense. Experiment with what makes you most productive. Makes sense. You got to experiment, and that's the thing is like, it's not like it works, it doesn't work. It's like experiment, tried this, didn't work. Tried working in a coffee shop. Nah, kind of didn't work, kind of worked. Try working in a library. Okay, that was a little better. Tried working at home. Had problems with, the kids. Okay, let me put some boundaries. Let me do this 3 days a week. Let me combination of coffee shop, library, and things like that. So I think you have to keep experimenting. Prioritize documentation and clear communication. Totally like documentation, put things in clear writing for the team versus relying on in-person meetings and then like the remote people, pick up the crumbs. Create boundaries between work and life. Just touched on that. Make yourself visible at work. Make yourself visible. So like if you're remote and it's like, oh, well, I don't know if I can get that promotion because I'm not on site and things like that. It's like, you know, uh, it should be about the work. So talk about the work that you're doing, um, talk about things you've completed, put it out there, share your wins, that kind of a thing. Number six, schedule time for socializing. That's huge. That's something I've been working on personally and trying to get better at. Connect with your teammates. Um, it's funny. I was talking about this one or two streams ago. This idea of like if there's some kind of a product or service for mental health for remote workers, it would be such a game changer. And as I'm looking at this, I just sort of visualized like a dashboard that shows for each team member, it shows like, let's say all of these factors, right? Or whatever, like ultimately there's going to be some list of KPIs for your sort of your mental health as a remote worker, and like where it would show like green, red, green, or yellow on each of them, right? And it's a little, and so for example, socializing, right? That's something where typically your company is not going to care about uh, whether you as an individual are socializing, um, whether you as an individual are socializing well in your personal life. Um, but they should care. I mean, it's a part of the picture. And yeah, there's boundaries like, hey, don't encroach on my personal life, kind of a thing. On the one hand, so there's a tension there, right? But like, and it's not to say that your company should know everything you're doing in your personal life. It's just if there's a red, green, or yellow of like, am I getting out to socialize once a week, 3 times a week? Like those things are important. I think that would be a complicated balance to get right. And I think that's what would make this service so powerful, and also why it doesn't exist already. It's probably complicated to work out those details, but socializing is huge. Socializing is huge. Connecting with your teammates also huge and a component of socializing. Do postmortems on key projects. Build in accountability. Accountability is also a big thing for a lot of people. Um, for everybody, but some people are able to keep themselves accountable, and more so and whatnot. Define your and the team's responsibilities and focus on your health. Right, so health, physical health, as well is such a huge component. So great article here with from somebody that has seen both the positive side and the negative side of working remote. Let's see, where are we at here? 16 minutes. All right. I'll do a quick Webflow update. So I did some work yesterday on another. So I've got sort of two projects cooking, which is essentially taking Commerce Hero and spinning it up in a different industry. So like a talent marketplace. And so I'm having fun with that. And it's wild to be able, like, as I'm working on the homepage, and I'm thinking through like, okay, how am I communicating, the what's important about this service, and I'm thinking like, for example, I'm simplifying a lot of the things that Commerce Hero does a lot of things, right, and I've pivoted different directions. I've emphasized certain pieces of functionality, and then I'm like, oh well, that's not so important to the core business model, whatnot. So it's always easier to start fresh and stuff. So there's a real clear focus on full-time hires and stuff like that. And like, I'm thinking about all the questions I get asked repeatedly, like literally, like this is like horrible, but like people ask about pricing all the time, and pricing is not on the homepage, not because I want to hide the pricing. It's because some people do. A lot of people, recruiters, you have to call to ask about the pricing, and I actually don't want to do that. And the pricing is in the public facing documentation, which is what I link people to. But I literally have not updated the homepage because I'm like, oh, I got to get in there, I got to design it, I got to da 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 da. And then like now I'm in Webflow, and I'm just like, I look through their library of different section styles, and they have all sorts of cool options. And I pick one, boom, put it in, write it up, and it's just beautiful. And so it's really wild to work at that level of abstraction where I'm not thinking about. I'm not thinking about layout, CSS issues. I'm just using these really nice building blocks to put something together, and things like button titles. Like we know from A/B tests that like button the text that you put on buttons is important. Like I know that, but I never get around. For example, the call to action button will say like get started, right? And I'm like, well, I should probably put something more specific. But then just the friction of working in code. Like it's definitely a superpower. The fact that I can work in code, the fact that I can build a business, do the marketing, all that is great, right? But when you're working at that level, there is a level of friction that makes you just move slowly. So, um, so being able to work at a higher level of abstraction is great. I was like, the button said get started. And then I was thinking about another one of the key areas of confusion is when you have a talent marketplace, you got to target both sides of the market uniquely. So the clients and the candidates, right? And that's something I've mixed together in some confusing ways with Commerce Hero, and something I've also wanted to clean up, but it's like, oh gosh, how do I do that? And so just like the simple tweak of like so the homepage is mostly targeted clients, but then there's a link that says, are you a candidate, or are you a developer, right? And And then so that'll take them to that developer facing page. And then the call to action, instead of saying get started, I was like, well, that might be confusing if it says get started, because the developer might think that's for them, whereas that get started button is for the client. So I changed from get started to start hiring. So I know that button titles like that are specific and clear make a huge difference, but I never, there's so much friction when you're working in the code that you just sort of don't end up making those changes. And like working in Webflow is just incredible. So having a lot of fun with that. Also, the idea of spinning up other marketplaces is really interesting. It's something I've thought about, I've talked to people about in the past, but then ultimately I've been like, oh God, it's going to be so complicated to figure out how to reuse the code base, to figure out how to figure out a business model behind it. But the cool thing is that, like, if I can get this to work in a no code workflow, which I think I can, then all of those worries um, about repurposing the code base and things like that are sort of gone. And so then it simplifies the other side of things, which is how can I figure out the business model of quote franchising or whatever it ends up being, technically profit share, whatever, revenue share. It's like, okay, now that I don't have to worry about that, I can figure this out and stuff like that. So I don't know how far it's going to go, but it's cool. I like the idea of like working with a couple of good friends on something like this, especially since I can do it without it taking, it's one thing to say, okay, let's spin something up. I'm going to have to spend 40 hours coding this. Like, that's just such a drain. Like, I don't know when I'd find that time, versus like, I'll spend an hour to throw up a beautiful homepage that's gonna, like, you're gonna love, right? And then the rest of the rest of the site, obviously. Um, so yeah, that's pretty cool, pretty exciting. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a fantastic Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow.